Have you
Having said
tried
that,
have you tried the Xbox One?
I don't actually have an Xbox One.
The controllers in that are, I mean, I think it's by far the best controller so far.
See, I knew I was going to say I like the 360, and somebody else is going to say no, I like the Xbox One.
I know it, and you know, and I'm not, I don't typically pay attention to these things. You know, I kind of, I play, you know, I've been playing since the early Nintendos, right, and the Ataris, right. So the form factor has changed drastically over the years, and each one has its nuances and its.
Everybody's got their favorite.
Yeah,
and I think it's really based on where they spent the most hours as a child getting pleasure out of using that device.
Yeah, and you just
or a young adult or whatever.
Yeah, you just adapt, right? Because you know, in the beginning you were using a block, and now you're using.
I didn't use the PS2 controller until after it actually used modern controllers.
Right.
I don't like it.
Right.
But
So
I swear by it.
So it's almost when you go from a block to a formed controller, I think there's a substantial jump, and then after that it's just sort of nuanced changes, right? But when I hold on to the Xbox One controller, it just feels natural.
What about those square? What were they? NES controllers?
Right.
The old original. What? Like you play Zelda on those.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The little blocks, the little
Yeah.
Almost like a wood block.
If that's your thing, if you still got one that you can somehow plug magically into your computer and have it work, awesome.
Right. Exactly.
Just a second, I got a cough.
So there you go. Yeah, not to be contrary to you like the 360 and I one-upped you, but it does feel different.
So I'm going to quickly show you some of the reference materials that I'm sourcing from. I'm going to give links. I mean, these are things you can find. So the one link for sure you'll get from the show notes will be this tutorial treasury that I just pointed at. But everybody should already have a hot link on their top bar or whatever makes it easy is a link to the API pages. I got a cough again, sorry. This is my most used resource of all on the Corona website. The thing that people should realize is on the left side here is, I pointed this out before, is a list of all the different libraries. But also if you scroll down, it's a list of all the different kinds of events, and I'll make this bigger so we can see this. All the different kinds of events that Corona supports. And among these are the Axis, which is for joysticks and gamepads and stuff like that. And let's see, where is it? Mouse, which is, of course, mouse. I don't get to explain that. And then key, which is both the keyboard, but it's also sort of like the universal catcher for any other device that can have buttons on. So your controller throws key events. Your handheld remote control for your Fire TV, it throws key events. So when you get into doing these odds and end controllers, that's the go-to for all key inputs. Today we're going to discuss key and mouse. And for reference, those pages look like this. And the key, you click on it, it takes you to the key event. And if you scroll down, it tells you some details about what's supported on what devices. For example, OS X, any of the simulated devices will catch keyboard inputs. But Windows Simulator, only Android simulated devices will catch the keyboard inputs under the premise that iOS doesn't support keys, so we're not going to simulate it supporting keys. The fact that the OS X simulator catches them for all varieties of devices is just a byproduct of the implementation of their simulator. Although I've railed against them several times, I'm sure if Rob watches this video or any of the other guys, they'll remember my discussions with them about, come on guys, just flip the switch and let key inputs go in on all simulated devices so I don't have to keep using an Android simulated device on Windows. What else? Okay, so the more important bit here is the properties for both of these events. So if you go to the reference, it gives you a long list of all the different properties that come in on the device. Descriptor, which is a very deep and detailed discussion we won't go into today. The device, it'll tell you, for example, on the keys, if you've got a keyboard, these things make sense. Is the Alt key down? Did the user press the Command key? Is the Control key down? It'll tell you the key name, which is the actual name that you see on your keyboard. typically, not always, and I'll show you some cases where that's not the case. Event name is just it's going to be the name of the event, so that'll be key. And then these are important, native key codes. So native key codes are sort of like the universal mapping for what the number is that goes with the actual key that was used on that device. So when you parse through these things, you really need to experiment and look up references on what the key codes are going to be and what the names of the keys are going to be before you say, oh, well, I'm just going to assume that the backspace key is backspace. Well, surprise, surprise, that isn't what it is. It's something else. So you need to take these things into account. And I'm going to give people today, as part of this discussion, some tools to research that stuff on their own easily. So when they start on the road to figuring out what keys they're going to assign to what functionality, they can test these key inputs and go, oh, that's the name of the event that I need to be looking for. And then phase. Now, one thing I find real confusing, and some other people do too, is unlike the touch phases, which have a began and an end, and they also have a moved in some other phases, but they have a began and an end phase. Keys, on the other hand, are up and down. So they're the equivalent of began and end, where down is began and up is ended. But it's named differently, and I kind of see where they're going with that. But I know that some people, they do this, and they write their code, and they're like, oh, my keyboard code's not working. And I look at it, and then I see, oh, began and ended. No, it's up and down. So it's like, okay, or down and up to correlate with those events. The other event is mice or mouse. Again, there's a discussion on platform support. Interestingly, the Android devices support mouse inputs. Some do anyways. iOS, again, does not. Although I still wonder today, now that we're going to the big form factor of the iPad Pro, if someday they're going to have some kind of mouse equivalent input on the iOS devices. I don't know.
You know, I wouldn't. I'm not suggesting this, but but I've heard tale of jailbreaking devices and then being able to use a mouse with them.
Yeah. I've read a little bit about jailbreaking iOS devices, and it seems like it's a deep and dark topic, but interesting.
Yeah, but there are documented cases of being able to use a mouse with an iPad, so it's not too far-fetched.
Yeah. I read somebody was actually able to install Linux on an iPad or something like that, and I was like, really? Awesome. That would have mouse support.
For sure.
Some kind of kernel. So, anyways, OS X, mouse support, obviously. Win32 desktop. I think it's interesting that they say Win32 desktop. It's worth noting that the Win32 simulator also supports it, and I can't remember right now if the iOS simulated devices also do, but we can go check it out while we're doing this discussion. But I'm going to put also in people's hands today. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to point out while you were there, a lot of people universally say Windows, and they mean Microsoft products, right? And Windows has not only expanded but also going through several different iterations on its own, right? So we've got, we have RT, and we have desktop, Win32, and then we have Windows Phone, right? So the Windows brand, whenever you're talking about things, can be kind of confusing. So saying Win32 desktop, is
that makes sense,
very descriptive.
No, you're right. Okay, you're right. So that's good that they put it there because the
because right below
the
Windows
binaries
Phone.
we're focused on are Win32 desktop binaries.
Yeah.
Nothing else. Right. Okay, so here's a tip. As with the key inputs, the mouse input says on the properties list that it's got these properties. Is the primary button down. So your left mouse button, secondary is your right mouse button, and middle is what it sounds like the middle mouse button for 3-button users like myself. And it says the event name, which is just going to be mouse, the time the event occurred, and the X and Y position of the mouse. But the thing is this is out of date, and so I'm giving you some demo code to go with this show. In fact, I should probably file here's a tip for watchers. When you find a problem with the documentation, click the report an issue